Oh, all right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. You're listening. Good morning, actually. We're here a little bit earlier than usual. I'm Kyle Andrew, and this is Millennial Talk 2.0. You're listening to WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. You can always like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio. This is a very, very special edition of Millennial Talk 2.0, a Mother's Day edition. I have a very, very special guest today with me. Born in Montgomery, Alabama, and graduated from Alabama State, I have Miss Dorothy. I don't know how to pronounce your
Piedrahita.
Piedrahita with me. Dorothy Piedrahita. That's very nice off the tongue. Yeah. So how are you? How are you? Thank you for coming, first of all.
First of all, thank you for inviting me,
Hmm.
and I'm so happy to get this opportunity to be with your guest
Hmm.
and all of the professionals by me, and I just appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just gonna get right into it. We met about a month and a half ago, and we sat and we talked about everything, your story. You have stories that are just I was speechless after our meeting. So we can start. You were born in Alabama.
That's correct.
Are you just you and your brother,
Yes.
and your mom and your dad? What was it like growing up for you in Montgomery, Alabama?
I was always angry because I found out very early that my skin wasn't accepted, my skin
Mhm.
color. But I made the best of it. I did
Mhm.
graduate from a high school in Montgomery, Alabama. And but my parents explained it to me that my skin color would never keep me back, and that my skin color was beautiful.
Mm.
So between the ages of 8 and 9, I believe it was 9, my parents got themselves involved into the Montgomery bus boycott.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first knowledge admit of civil rights. And that's where my first time that I met Dr. King.
Mm-hmm. What year was that?
Well, I was 9 years old.
Okay.
I'm 72 and a half now.
Okay.
So
okay.
go figure.
Okay.
Don't start me now, Kyle.
So you first met Dr. King when you were 9.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And later on, you would later march with him.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so moving forward, you eventually went to Alabama State College, and you studied sociology.
Sociology and psychology.
Okay.
I didn't intend to. I intended to do political science and maybe finance because I wanted to be an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
But when I met one of my professors, never will forget him, Dr. Hardy, G. Garrett Hardy, Alabama State, one of the world's most renowned sociologists. You don't hear much about Dr. Hardy. And so I decided that my calling was much more than making money.
Mm-hmm.
And because the humanity of the earth is really important. And
Right.
so that's why I decided to go into that field of endeavor.
Okay. And so were you always interested in sociology? Because I majored in sociology as well. And it wasn't something that I wanted to do, more something that I just decided to do just because I needed to graduate. So how did that come about?
It came about when I walked on Alabama State's campus.
Mm-hmm.
And, you go around, you meet the professors.
Mm-hmm.
And I met them all, but they didn't impress me. Dr. Hardy did.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you do not need to be an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go into the field of sociology, get your bachelor's, get your master's, and your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go that far. I started on the master's and I stopped
Mm-hmm.
to help raise my son. And but sociology has taken me everywhere.
Yeah.
I've met and been involved with ambassadors, because at one point I did work for the governor of Alabama
Mm-hmm.
as a volunteer coordinator, and he won. And so I've met numerous people that I might not have met if I'd gone in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
So it has served me well.
Okay. And talk about your student activity while you were in college, like the activism that you took place in while you were in college, because you started relatively early, and you were just protesting and advocating for so much so young. So tell me about that.
Well, actually, I started around 9 years old with the Montgomery bus boycott. Okay.
Okay.
But then I knew about Alabama State because I lived in Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents had promised me an automobile because I was on my way out of Alabama. I was running. You know, you graduate, you want to run.
Absolutely.
And then I was supposed to integrate Auburn University. But my mom and I visited Auburn, and all I got was, and I'm going to say, is it permissible to say the N-word?
No.
I didn't think so. But that's what I was called when we made our visitation on campus. And I told my mom, no. I was also accepted at Tuskegee. So we came from Auburn down 85, and we stopped off at Tuskegee, the campus. I wasn't called anything like that. We already had family in Tuskegee. And then on the ride home, my mother said, you know, Dorothy Jean, you only have one scholarship. This is a private college. We might not be able to afford it. So we rode back down 85 again, and we stopped at Alabama State. I was already accepted there.
Okay.
And the first day I walked on campus as a student, I saw the stark differences between the University of Alabama and Alabama State University. So that's when it started. And from then on, I was involved knowingly in the civil rights movement.
Okay. So your story is so interesting. You said you worked with a lot in politics.
Yes.
And you decided that you yourself didn't want to run. Why is that?
Well, I did run for mayor of Montgomery in 2000 because I had to come back home to take care of my mother who had Alzheimer's.
Right.
And I ran for mayor. I moved back to Montgomery in 98, and conditions had not improved for African Americans, white, whatever, they weren't making any progress. So I decided I wanted to run for mayor, and boy, did the powers to be get on me. I'm still bleeding in the back from knives that they put in my back.
I can imagine.
I was called that woman from Atlanta, and a woman from Atlanta, and why do you want to do this? It's not time for a black person, let alone a black woman, to be mayor of Montgomery, Alabama.
And this was in 2000?
This is in 2000. It was very hurtful because Montgomery, I can't speak to other small towns.
Right.
Maybe the one I live in now.
Right.
But blacks in that town reported to white people. And the preachers were part of that. The black churches in Montgomery. The black ministers tore me down. They tore me down and encouraged their members when I ran not to vote for me. Now, that's a fact. And they didn't in numbers. Because at that time, the African-American black, we had 29% of the vote. Nobody was going to get 50%.
Right.
And so they put one black in and two white, one of the previous mayor that held that office before Jim Foreman. This is really history. And I remember we had gone to a funeral of some muckety-muck person, hi muckety-muck, so I attended the funeral. So the past mayor and I, we were sitting in the pew, and we started talking. And I remember he leaned over to me. He says, you're not going to win, right? I said, how do you know?
Who was this that said that?
Jim Robinson. He was mayor of, I believe that was his name, of Montgomery before Former was mayor. These people staring on like 20 years, 25 years. Okay?
Right.
And I wanted to break that up. So while we were sitting in the pew, they were eulogizing this person. He said, you're not going to win. I said, how do you know? He said, they're not going to let you win. I said, who are you talking about? What let? Who was that? Who are you talking about? I knew what he was talking about.
Right.
And so I said, but I'm still going to run. I'm not a quitter. I started on this road a long time ago because I was born in a house in Montgomery because black people couldn't go to the hospital. And so my activism started really young. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It started in a little area by Alabama State. It was called Bel Air. Now Alabama State University bought up all that property. That's where Nat King Cole was born. That Nat King Cole home is on Alabama State's campus now.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Yeah.
And my dad and Nat King Cole, they were friends. My dad used to play the harmonica. And so my activism started a long time because I would go with my father. When he would get, all black men at that time used to go to shoe shine parlors, get the shoes shined so they could go to church. Shoes would be shining. And so I was the only little girl, no boys, getting the shoes shine, and I'm listening to these men. And they weren't going to say anything that was insulting, like I can't say the N word. So I listened. I listened to them. So coming from a family like that, whose family, my mother, they created their own school because they couldn't go with whites. So I've been out here a long time, and I'm not tired yet. And so I thank Alabama State, because Alabama State, they have a museum there now, and I'm featured very prominently on campus. They have honored me since 2013. I didn't expect any honor, not at all. But when they decided that we want you to come on campus and talk a lot about your movement, and because these people weren't there when I was there, and so I'm featured very prominently in that museum, and I started to talk more about my life experiences there because, as I mentioned to you before, I was nearly killed at least 3 times by the Ku Klux Klan when I was 19 or 18.
I remember.
Now that's very serious.
I remember. I'm going to ask you about that a
Okay.
little later on.
Okay.
But speaking about where you've been acknowledged and noticed, in 2017, you invited me and my mom and your son Wendell along with you on this trip, and you were recognized in Selma, Alabama. And we rode on the shuttles with Jesse Jackson and John Lewis, and that was just like a really cool experience. What role did you play in the whole Selma, Alabama situation?
Well, I was not in Selma. My home was Montgomery.
Okay.
I had friends that were in Selma, so
Now, how far is that from?
it's Selma Highway at Edmund Pettus Bridge. It's like maybe 40 miles from Selma. And so I was mainly in Montgomery, but I had friends in Selma, as I had friends in Tuskegee.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
They were all in college, too.
Okay. So the recognition, where did that come from, and what role did you play? Because you're featured in the book, and you got your nice little paragraph of your biography in here.
Well, young women like me were never honored in terms of the civil rights movement. We were what they call the unsung heroes. No one talked about me. No one talked about a woman who at age 18 or 19 was nearly killed on her own college campus. No one talked about the woman who spent some time in jail, and when she was released, if she hadn't gone with her father, she might have been killed. So my history is one of the unsung histories, and there are a lot of us like that. Women always have taken the back seat, and I always felt that one day, as I knew before I died, I was going to see a black president of the United States of America, and I said that.
That's awesome.
I said that, and I have lived to see a black man be the president of the United States of America, and I volunteered with him in both of his campaigns.
Wow.
Sure did.
Wow. So going back to your college campus, you're 19 years old, you're about to speak, and you've been targeted.
I was targeted, all right. That picture now is on the white page, it's Google, it's everywhere. I joined SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, that was an outgrowth of SCLC with Dr. King's group. We considered them old folk. They weren't old folk. I'm old folk now, just like them. And so we...
so the members of SNCC who were considered to be the old folk?
No, the young folks. SNCC was a young group, but
Oh, okay,
SCLC was the old folk.
Okay, I got you.
Outgrowth. And so I joined SNCC, and people like James Orange, John Lewis, Stokely, all these people, they were young. So I decided I was going to join the youth group instead of joining the SCLC group, which was a better fit for me.
Absolutely.
Now, we were nonviolent because what were we going to fight against? Men on horseback with guns and cattle prods and all that. So we had to be nonviolent. But we weren't nonviolent in our hearts and in our mind, because I was willing to die, and I almost did on a couple of occasions, but I was saved to be here today. So I've never been nonviolent. It's just that it wasn't a good fit.
Right. Okay. So WCEG Talk Radio, you're listening to Millennial Talk 2.0. My guest here is Miss Dorothy
Good, you got it.
Piedrahita.
Piedrahita.
I'm gonna get it by the end of the show.
Okay, took me 3 years, but I finally got it.
Oh, it took you 3 years yourself?
Yes, when I met my husband.
All right. So in this book, it says that one of the words, the mottos that you live by is treat all people with fairness and respect always. Respect people always and stand up for what you believe in. And it sounds like you've been doing that since you were 9 years old.
I certainly have.
And I think that's something that I'm going to start living by as well, because something that aggravates me is when I see other people not being respected. Also with myself, I demand to be respected everywhere I go. But if I see someone else being disrespected, I feel like I always have to say something or step in if it's necessary.
If it's necessary,
Yeah.
But if it's a real serious danger situation, like the 2 young men that stepped up recently and these boys came in there and shot everybody, I think in a situation like that, you must think, and these young men didn't think about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they met the ultimate, they're dead. So it depends on the situation. My family's often telling me to don't get in situations because people will kill you today. And I weigh the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I will weigh it. And so it's good to live by, but it's also good to install or institute what you feel is necessary for you. But that's mine. That's how I live.
Okay. And so here you are with walking with MLK, Coretta Scott King. You can look at this picture and just point out any other significant people that you may see and just kind of reflect for me. What were you all doing? Where were you going? And the aftermath.
Well, Dr. King, did I not give you the right picture? This was part of the Selma to Montgomery March also.
Mm-hmm.
You do see Coretta there.
I do.
Martin Luther King. You do see some other, that looks like William Consular. He was an attorney when we got arrested. When anybody got arrested, we had an attorney. And Abernathy's wife, John Lewis. And some of the other people, I can't, I don't remember.
Wow. Oh.
Yes. Oh, it fell. Something fell. Something.
Move your frame down.
Yeah, move your
Take
frame.
that down, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can hold it up in front of that camera here.
Okay.
This one is your camera right there.
All right.
There we go.
All right. So, because before your activism, you did time.
Oh yeah, I did some time.
So, I
And
think
proud of
that's
it.
I think that's very commendable. Tell me about that experience.
That, if any of you have seen the movie Selma,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to see it because I knew some of the historical points in there weren't going to be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it, it wasn't the way it should have been. Well, remember if you saw that scene in front of the Capitol where King was speaking and throngs of people were in front of him?
Right.
That was the day I got arrested. Now, that also comes with part of this 7 Montgomery March.
Mm-hmm.
And I got arrested because I wasn't going to leave the students that had marched. I wasn't, and the other people in Montgomery and around the world that came to assist African American black people to gain their rights. And I did go to jail, and I stayed out there 24 hours, like everybody else. And that was a very bad time. My dad was there. My parents have always been where I didn't know they were. And the police kept telling me to get out. Your dad wants you to come. Because, see, my dad was behind me when we were marching. I never knew my dad had a gun on him. I have the .38 now. Oh, what am I saying? But it's not together.
Okay.
And he said no white man was going to beat his daughter because the day before that, the students had been beaten unmercifully on High and Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So that night we went down the Selma Highway to talk to Dr. King. And he said he would come and we would go talk to the sheriff. And we did. And I got arrested after that speech. And this is the sad part about this situation. One of the times that I probably would have been murdered. But there was a black jailer who called my family to say, come get Dorothy Jean. he had heard something. And so they brought me down because whomever this white man was, they were going to put me in his care. But the black jailer had called my father, said, come get Dorothy Jean. Well, my father got in before the white man came in. So whomever was the jailer asked me who did I want to leave with. I said, I'm leaving with my dad. I don't know this man.
Right.
So I went home, and my family, they were greeting me. And the only thing I wanted was a bologna sandwich and cheese. College students ate a lot of that, like pork and beans and things of that.
I think now it's ramen noodles now.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I wanted. So and they hugged me, and I went to bed. But it worried me, who was this man coming to get me? Who was this man? And I got up the next morning. I went to SNCC, CORE, SCLC, Montgomery Improvement Association, to ask, had they sent somebody for me? All of the heads said no. Okay? So I dodged a bullet. And then I continued my activism. I got away with that. But
so did you ever find out who's...
I never found out who this person was. Because I hadn't recognized him. He didn't come from our attorney, who was William Kunstler. He would have been there. Because, see, he's the one that we need would get us out of jail.
Right.
But I don't believe he was William Kunstler because I asked William Kunstler.
And
He's a Jewish lawyer. Yes.
It says here the student selected Dorothy Frazier as our student spokesperson to be negotiated with the county officials. Dr. King's attorney acquired the permit from federal judge Frank M. Johnson. I think that's incredible.
About.
That's amazing.
That's exactly because I know what my strengths are. My strengths are communicating. And so when they selected me, they knew they had someone that would speak up for them. That's why that time on campus when I got up to speak, remember I told you, a long gun bullet went by my head. And that was another time that I missed. I'm on campus speaking. A bullet goes by my head, and I hear my mother scream, because my mother was a nurse of the university. And a young man by the name of Mustafa, Willie Ricks, said they have shot Dorothy Frazier. Well, when the bullet, I heard the wind, so I dropped. And I heard my mother scream. People were out there. It wasn't anybody on campus but the National Guard from Governor George Wallace. Now, who would have a long gun on campus? But you see what I'm saying?
Wow.
It's scary.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We have Miss Dorothy Frazier, Miss Dorothy Piedrahita.
You know what I'm going to do? Just call me Miss Dorothy.
Miss Dorothy, let's do that. All right, we'll be right back.